Hello again. I'm just trying to keep up with the mushrooms here. Growing mushrooms for market is sort of like doing a dance. There's an interesting balance that you have to strike. And it's probably one of my favorite things about doing this kind of work. It's really fun. I've got kind of a short attention span. I'm easily distracted. It leads to me making mistakes sometimes because I'll start something and get distracted, and can lead to trouble. But it's also one of the things that makes it suitable for me, this mushroom farming thing, because you have to do a lot of different things kind of at the same time, and you got to keep all of the rotation going, and it makes it interesting for me, and it keeps me engaged. So one of the tricky things about growing mushrooms is growing the right amount. What is the right amount? And the short answer to that is the right amount is actually more than you really need. There are different ways to approach marketing for mushrooms. Most people, I think, start out with farmers markets. And I think that's a pretty smart way to go. Even though it's not the direction that I took, I can see why people do. Because you can, just get set up at a farmer's market someplace, and then maybe you're going there one day a week. You can spend the rest of your week growing mushrooms, and then I suppose like the day of, like early that morning or the night before, you can harvest everything that you can, get everything packaged up, and then take it out to a farmer's market. And then if you can sell everything that you've grown that week, that's a great deal. You can see, how quickly you sell out. If you sell out halfway through the day, you need to grow more. Or if you come back with mushrooms, you don't sell them all, you can kind of hold steady there. And then each week, see if your market is improving or increasing. I started out in a different way. I was working another job. I was actually running another business when I started kind of exploring the possibility of becoming a full-time mushroom farmer. So it was something I was kind of doing part-time. So I started out growing as a hobbyist. As I began to grow more mushrooms, I just started looking for places to market them. So I started selling to people directly. I started selling to restaurants. So there are a number of great restaurants in my area. It's a tourist destination. It's a beautiful place. A lot of people come here for vacations, just to relax. There are actually a lot of people who travel to this town from surrounding cities. There are a lot of big towns within, 30 minutes to an hour from here. And as a result of that, we've got some great restaurants. So I began targeting some of the nicer restaurants in our area and asking them if they would like to carry our mushrooms. So there are a lot of restaurants who want to offer their customers locally sourced produce, and that's exactly what we do. And I've tried a number of different things. I've tried selling to markets, and I do have one small market in the area that we stock with mushrooms. It's not a huge moneymaker, but it's good for branding, and they're nice people, and I find that selling directly to restaurants is probably the most profitable way for me to operate, just because restaurants buy larger amounts at a time. And it's a regular sale every week, maybe sometimes a couple times a week. So I'm primarily targeting higher end restaurants. And as of right now, we're in 4 different local restaurants. So I'm always looking for that next nice restaurant to be in. So here's where the tricky part comes in. If you don't grow enough mushrooms, well, that's a problem. You're going to start looking to source them elsewhere. You have to really come through and really be consistent in order to grow a business. So that's really what I'm focusing on. I'm focusing on growing really good, high quality mushrooms really consistently and being able to deliver those week after week after week on schedule. And by doing that over time, I'm really cementing the quality, the dependability, our brand, right? This is super important. So I've been cautious about overselling my product because I hate to get into a situation to where I'm having to call the chef and say, hey, I don't have mushrooms for you this week. On the other hand, I don't want mushrooms to go to waste. So the idea of growing too many and then end up throwing them away, I hate the idea of that. So the solution to that I found is to find local agencies that are helping people in need. And in Santa Cruz, there are a few organizations like that. Probably my favorite one, if I have to pick a favorite, would be this organization called Food Not Bombs. Now, these guys provide meals to people who are hungry in Santa Cruz, California. And every week they're downtown by the clock tower. They set up a booth and they dish out meals. I mean, a lot of meals. I'm not really sure how many, but my understanding is that it's all vegan meals, and mushrooms are a perfect addition to that. So we're fortunate in that if we have extra mushrooms and their freshness is starting to wane, we can drop them off. On Saturday morning, I'll drop by there where they're preparing the meals and drop off some mushrooms. Sometimes more, sometimes less. But before they really lose their freshness, they're not quite fresh enough to deliver to one of my high-end restaurants, but they're still fresher than most mushrooms that you'll find even at a grocery store. So I can confidently grow more mushrooms than I know that I actually need, than I know that I can actually sell, and know that they're going to go to a good place and that people are going to still eat them and it's going to benefit people. And I like the idea of that. My wife, Tiffany, and I, we both love the idea of being able to contribute to the community. There's another organization here in town called Gray Bears. Gray Bears provides meals, they cook meals for people, I think every day of the week. Then they also have this program called Meals on Wheels, where they bring fresh food to seniors primarily, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, they're close by and they're another place where we can drop off fresh mushrooms and know that they're going to get utilized and they're going to go to people who need them. It's amazing how much pressure this really takes off, right? You're never going to grow a crop that's there's no way to predict exactly what's going to happen. There's also going to be crops that fail. Sometimes the mushrooms just aren't going to produce the way that you expected them to. There may be some contamination. sometimes you just have a bumper crop and there's way more mushrooms than you really expected. It's just kind of the nature of growing them. So if there's a decision to be made of whether to grow too few or too many, well, I'm going to opt for trying to grow too many. And then just make sure that whatever's left over goes to a good home. And this is what I'm talking about with the kind of the dance of growing mushrooms, because you grow so many and all of a sudden I'm kind of stressed out because I've got so many mushrooms. But then if it looks like I'm coming up short and I'm not going to have enough to meet all of my orders, well, that's stressful because I don't want to tell anybody, hey, I don't have enough mushrooms for you. So being able to just grow a lot and knowing that they're not going to go to waste really takes the stress off. And I can just work on maximizing my grow space and producing as many mushrooms as possible. There's this balance between the amount of space that you have. There's lab space. There's incubation area where your blocks just get opportunity to colonize and get ready for fruiting. Then there's the fruiting area itself where the mushrooms grow. You need some space to process that, to harvest them, package the mushrooms, and then there's like refrigerator space to store the mushrooms, and all of that needs to be balanced out. And the space is just kind of one of the resources that you need to take into consideration. There's the time that it takes to grow mushrooms, the time that it takes to do the actual work, let's say the lab work, for example, time that it takes for the substrates to actually incubate, colonize. There's the time that it takes for them to fruit in the fruiting area. And then there's the time that it takes to actually harvest the mushrooms, package the mushrooms. So that all needs to be taken into consideration as well. Then there's resources, the amount you have to spend on materials, sawdust, if you're buying sawdust, grain, if you're buying grain, all the supplies, the bags that you grow in, syringes, all of the supplies that you need to grow. There's a balance of all of these things, and sometimes you come up a little short on one area. Like space is usually the one that's most challenging in the beginning. Sometimes you need to just get creative about how to utilize the amount of space that you have in order to just grow the most mushrooms that you can actually manage. Here at my facility in Santa Cruz, I have probably 1,000 square feet of shop space that I'm using for all of my incubation, all of my growing, my processing, and what little bit of storage that I do. I just basically have one refrigerator that I'm using to store mushrooms. And my model is based on the idea of not really storing mushrooms for very long. My model works when mushrooms are going out very fast. So my storage area gets filled up very quickly. So the idea is keep them moving out all the time. And that's great too, because it helps keep the mushrooms fresh, which is a core value. I want my mushrooms to be fresher than any mushrooms that you'll find anywhere else. So having really limited storage space for fresh mushrooms actually is good for carrying out that mission, because it forces me to keep them mushrooms going out. If they're not going out to a restaurant, if they're not going out to a store or to walk-in customers, or any of the customers that we happen to have at a given time, then those mushrooms need to be going out to a local charity somewhere, or I need to eat them myself, which I love. I've decided to take the resources that I have, the space that I have, the time that I have, and maximize the amount of my mushroom growing. Processing the maximum amount of substrate that I'm able to do with the space that I have, and it's all pretty balanced right now. I feel like I have enough space and enough time and enough resources to produce the maximum amount that one guy can probably do without like working myself into the ground. Most of the time I forget that I'm actually working because I just love it that much. And I think that's what it takes if you want to be in this business. And I'm just gonna work like this for the next several months and just really dial it in, really tune it up, really maximize my processes and develop my systems to where they're really super tight. And I think that by the end of this year, I'll be ready to look at getting into maybe a farmer's market. And I think that'll be kind of like the icing on the cake for us. Rather than being kind of the first step, I think it's going to be more like kind of that last little bit to where if we've got some mushrooms left over at the end of the week, and who knows, maybe some tinctures, maybe some powders, some dried mushrooms or other products, in addition to some fresh mushrooms. So I hope you found that informative. Yeah, thanks for taking time to listen, and keep growing mushrooms, keep eating mushrooms. They're good for you and they're delicious. And tell a friend. People need more mushrooms in their life, in my humble opinion. All right, have a good one.